space and science has featured in some of your past work as well, and it's front and center in this film. What keeps you kind of coming back to those topics and, exploring them, in different ways?
Oh, that's a good question, Tyler. I like that. It's very thoughtful. I guess I didn't even really realize I was doing it until people started telling me that I was doing that. And I think a lot of that though kind of comes back to the way like I was raised. So both of my parents are in the sciences. My dad is a computer scientist and mathematician, and my mom works in big tech. And I think science and technology were always like sort of really sort of threaded into my upbringing in a big way. And I guess like that ends up kind of working its way into all my kind of artistic pursuits in a large way. I obviously like, Linoleum has this sort of TV show in it. It's called Above and Beyond, and it's really based on, Bill Nye the Science Guy, or Mr. Wizard, or some of these old sort of like kids science shows. And yeah, I guess like I kind of, I can't help but come back to those things. It's just sort of like the way it's like in the fabric of me or something. I wish I had like a more solid answer, but like I guess the way in which I try to like make films and write films, I sort of try to approach it organically and like make things come from somewhere within me. And I think that's just a large part of me. And I think that those kind of like scientific themes kind of appear again and again, because I think if I weren't a filmmaker, I would be a scientist. And I think that there's just as much creativity in the arts as there is the sciences, and the way in which to forward science takes creative thinking. It takes, sort of thinking out of the box, I guess, you could say. And so those kind of ideas are what always, I don't know, they always kind of float around in my mind. So I just ended up putting them to paper.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I loved, as you mentioned, you have the show within the movie, and I grew up. I loved watching Cosmos and Bill Nye. That
Yeah.
really was so exciting to me. So, how was it, filming this kind of low budget educational TV show within the movie? How was it doing those scenes because they come across so fun and it's
Yeah.
really fun to watch.
Man, yeah, Tyler, that stuff was so fun. We shot that on the first day. Our first day of shooting the movie was shooting all of the television show stuff. So I think it was really sort of like a joy for the cast and crew to be able to kind of step into this other world that almost looked like a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of thing or something, like where it was just a lot of fun. And it was fun, I think for Jim too, because he got to do sort of a lot of improving during those scenes and things like that, and kind of have a good time with Ray as they were kind of like in character in these kind of like goofy science characters. So yeah, it was definitely inspired by those old this kids science shows, but also, me and my producers actually that I went to high school with, two of my producers I went to high school with, Chad Simpson and Chad Harbold. And we all had, in high school, we had a public access TV show every Sunday. We had a half an hour that we had to fill. So we, kind of grew up in this sphere of like delivering the Betamax tape to the to the station on Saturday so they could play it Sunday morning, and trying to get all that material together and shooting stuff at our parents' houses and in our basements and stuff like that. And so there's that kind of nostalgia that we brought back into the movie. Yeah, so I guess, it was that whole TV show stuff was like some of the most fun, aspects to shoot for sure.
Yeah, it definitely shows, and I was
Yeah.
so impressed with Jim Gaffigan. We've seen him really expand and do different types of roles like over the past decade, but I feel like his stand-up is just so prominent that I just keep being surprised by him. When did you realize that he had the dramatic range to do this in a dual role as well?
Yeah, it's good you bring up that. Yeah, he plays obviously two characters in the movie. It was like when his name kind of came up in the running through our casting director and through the agency that he is at and everything. It was pretty immediate. I mean, I think that I kind of like was like, oh, this is right. Like this feels perfect. He, is obviously like near and dear to America as this like, you know, stand-up comedian, but has such acting chops and has shown that, like you said, over the last 10 years or so. And I think he's getting more and more into it and getting more and more recognition for it as we move forward. I mean, obviously he's a real powerhouse stand-up, but I think there's something to Jim that really not surprised me, but like I remember having our first phone call when, you know, his agent said, oh, he's interested in the project, and let's get on the phone. And we got on the phone, and I remember he came in with you know, such strong ideas and such a sort of like heartfelt you know, touch to this character immediately. And those ideas like came from a real place. Like it was like he was obviously in it for the passion, I guess is what I could say, and like was very interested in making a character feel full. It wasn't, obviously he wasn't doing this like for a paycheck or something like that. It was really about the passion of acting, and he loves that stuff. And so, you know, after having that first conversation with him, I was like, oh, he gets it, you know what I mean? Like he gets it, and he knows he can pull this off in a huge way. And so at that point it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and you know, him being interested and Ray, you getting all these talented actors, I think really you know, speaks to the script that you were able to write for this movie. And there's so many interesting themes throughout it, and so many of them tie into this exploration of kind of aging and fulfillment, and we see them through different lenses. What really spurred on this idea and to delve deeply into all these different facets of these interconnected themes here?
Yeah, man. I wish like there was like a really easy answer to that. I mean, the script took forever to write, and I think that it sort of shows in a lot of way that, you know, it was this kind of like ensemble mess for a long time, and I didn't quite know like how I was gonna kind of piece it all together. And I remember my I had started writing the screenplay in 2015, and in 2018 my grandfather passed away, and I was there in the hospital when it happened. And in kind of the commotion, the nurse ended up giving me his watch, which was his final possession. And I remember later that night I took a look at the watch and I saw that it was 3 hours off. And in that moment I sort of realized that like either, you know, he was living 3 hours in the future, or we're all living 3 hours in the past. You know, there's a subjective look at time, and that kind of shifted my brain into thinking like, oh, like this script, structuring the script in a way that's like very subjective could really work here. In that, you know, there's this character who's kind of like, you know, almost talking to themselves as their life is coming to an end, and like looking back and sort of like being able to take advice from their younger self, you know, or their older self. Like, you know, it's sort of like it's this very melodic dream state that the whole film is in, that you don't really even know until kind of towards the end. But it was a really delicate balance. But I think that's like what kind of brought me back to the script again and again over the course of many years. I mean, I had, you know, been writing other things in the meantime, but I just kept coming back to this one. And yeah, I was very, very lucky that people like Rhea Seehorn or Tony Shalhoub or Katelyn Nacon, these people like come onto this project and work to make this thing come to life in a way that I think really felt like the picture in my head, you know. So I felt like I was in very good hands with that cast.
Yeah, and Ray gives such a lovely performance as Erin. Can you speak to just, you know, obviously she has so many accolades, but can you speak to just what impressed you the most about just seeing her breathe life into this character that, you know, you
Yeah.
worked on and wrote for so long?
Well, the thing with Rhea is like I've never worked with such a professional. And I say that because like she's so on it. Like she's so passionate about character and arc and story, and she knows how to make that stuff happen. I think I'm very in a lot of ways like proud, because she's now blowing up in an even more bigger way. She's doing, you know, Vince Gilligan's next show as the lead, you know, and following like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. It's like, wow, like this person is like just unbelievable. And she brought to the table so many great ideas. A lot of tweaks to the script with her character ended up happening in the last few weeks leading up to the movie, because of her input. And I think that led to the best version of that character. And I don't know, I guess like she's also just such a like a lighthearted, like amazing, thoughtful, genuine person that like it just everybody on the set fell in love with her. She was just so easy to talk to, and everybody was equal. And you know, the way in which like she would hang out with us, and like at the premiere party she was the first person on the dance floor, like that kind of stuff. You know, it's like those are the kind of people you want to work with, and the people you can really be friends with. And she was no doubt in that category. So I felt really sort of honored to have her on our set, you know.
Yeah, she does such a great job. And my last question for you, you had the South by Southwest premiere last year and
Yeah.
got such great feedback. What was most exciting about just watching others take in the movie and kind of put together the revelations in real time? Because I imagine that has to be so satisfying.
It was cool. Yeah, Tyler. I mean, it's cool because like you never know. Like, especially like, going into like a festival premiere like South by. Yeah, you never know like if it's gonna work, or like if people are just gonna get confused and get up and walk out. You know, thankfully I don't think anybody left or anything, but it was like a real pleasure, you know. And I wasn't the pleasure didn't come from like tricking people, because I don't think the film is ever like, look, I love M. Night Shyamalan, you know, and I know he's like known for these big twist kind of films and stuff like that. And we did look at that kind of an idea for this, but we wanted the film to have kind of more of a soft reveal than like a heavy twist. And so, you know, some people will figure out the conceit of the film like in the first 30 minutes. And I really like that. I actually don't mind that at all. Like if some people will say like, you know, I think I figured it out early on or in the middle somewhere, you know, and I like that. Like I think that there's still so much to be drawn from it from any point in the movie. And I think actually a lot of people, most people will come up and say, I need to watch that again now that I know why I'm watching it, you know. And I think that's kind of the most fun and honestly like very heartfelt thing for me is when people like truly want to go watch it again. I'm like, wow, you know, like it just means a lot. So as a filmmaker, you know, we make these movies for people, and so when they show up and actually watch these things, it's a real blessing.